Well, we've had about 1 week to process the Rockies' decision to make Paul DePodesta the new president of baseball operations. And today, we break it down a little bit. Let's unpack it. Let's dive into the layers. We bring in our good friend Kevin Henry live from the GM meetings in Vegas. That's coming up next on the DNVR Rockies podcast. What's up, everyone? Welcome in to the DNVR Rockies podcast. We are here at the DNVR studios, the DNVR bar right below us. We're having a good time. We're getting ready to talk some Rockies baseball because, I get it's the offseason. I get that we're all in baseball hibernation. But the Rockies are in full swing right now. We've got a new president of baseball operations. We have conversations about maybe a new manager. We've got a new GM that could be around the corner. There's a lot of good things to talk about right now, and it's an exciting time here in Rockies world. Once.
We've officially, which we wanted to do way earlier, closed the book on the 2025 season.
Yep.
But we're full steam ahead looking to 2026, and whether or not the news you think is good, is bad, I think the Rockies will be the most newsworthy MLB team throughout the course of the entire offseason, other than like teams that sign free agents. Like anything outside of the big free agent signings, the Rockies will be kind of dominating this because now that there's a president of baseball operations in place, like you said, a potential new GM, a potential either rehiring of Warren Schaefer or a new manager. There's so many different pieces that can fit into this puzzle of the offseason, and I'm legitimately excited to talk about.
It's like the Twins, whether you agree with what the Twins did during the trade deadline, selling off all their pieces and completely starting a rebuild from scratch. It was probably the most newsworthy thing to happen during the trade deadline because it was so stark, right? Everything changed for the Twins. For the Rockies, everything's going to be changing for 2026. The team is going to look very different, maybe not from a player perspective, but from an organizational perspective in 2026. And that's what we're going to be talking about today, talking about the new man in charge, Paul DePodesta. Like I said, we've got Kevin Henry from the Denver Gazette, who's calling into the show here in just a moment or so. And we're going to be talking to him live from the GM meetings in Vegas. He's probably having a lot more fun than we are. But I want to start by getting kind of our first look at Paul DePodesta yesterday because he spoke to the media yesterday in Vegas, spoke to Kevin and Patrick and Thomas out there in Vegas, and pretty much answered one question. And that question was, why Colorado? What is your goal? What made you choose Colorado, choose to come to Colorado? And he gave this answer that I wanted to start the show with before we bring Kevin in. Yeah, fire up that video for me.
Well, I think it's a unique challenge for a lot of different reasons. Certainly people have talked about the ballpark and the altitude and things like that. But for me, one of the things that's the most interesting about it is just the impact it can have on so many people, right? I mean, one of the things I talk about all the time in professional sports, certainly we're in this to win and all those sorts of things, but what we're really in it for is creating these like salient moments for our fans. Right? These moments that will live on in their lives, their families' lives, et cetera, where it just makes this indelible impact. Now that's because of you won something, right? But to be able to do that in Denver, where the Rockies just have such reach with their fans, and to do it in that environment, I just think would be incredibly special.
That was the first words from Mr. Paul DePodesta, new president of baseball operations, and we get the first words from Vegas with Kevin Henry. Kevin, you're looking a little tan. You're looking like you're getting some color, and the weather looks beautiful out there.
That just proves that I've been inside the casino, so that's a good thing. So everything is good here in Vegas, and a lot of positivity and excitement around the Rockies, man.
Kevin, I think we can hear you, but it's going kind of in and out. If you could just call back real quick, we'll restart with you and bring you back in here. So just exit out, call right back, and we'll get you back on. We're having an audio issue there. So we'll have Kevin come back here in just a moment. But yeah, I'm a little jealous. We are going to be in Orlando coming up here for the winter meeting, so we'll have some
pool
fun
time.
there. Yeah,
Some pool time in Orlando. Maybe hit up Disney World.
yeah. I think our hotel is going to be right next to Disney World, so the opportunities are endless. Kevin's probably having a little bit more fun being out there in Vegas. Yes, yeah. Kevin is a robot. Yes, he is a robot. I'm always impressed by the fact that Kevin gets to do all of this incredible stuff out there. Kevin, how do you sound now? Can you hear us okay?
You can hear me now.
I think a little bit. Yeah. How does it sound on your end? Audio's still coming in a little. Audio's still coming in a little choppy. It might be a connection issue, Kevin. Yeah. Should we? Is there a way to do like a phone call type of thing? Okay. Yeah, Kevin. It's kind of going in and out. I'm not sure. We were able to hear you just fine just a second ago.
Let me see if this is a better signal, maybe better.
Yeah, Kevin's walking back into the hotel. You can see the Eiffel Tower in the background, all that kind of stuff. Kevin, we'll kind of move aside for a second. Spence and I are going to start the show by just kind of talking some Rockies stuff, and then we'll see if we can bring you on after that first break. So we'll let Yaya kind of see if he can work through things in the background here in just a moment.
All right, let me know what's up. I don't know if this seems better. All right, I'm happy to move and see. All
right, yeah. We'll just do this first segment, just Spence and I, and then we'll see if we can bring Kev back in here for the second segment. But I want to start by talking about that first video, that first clip that we got from Mr. Paul DePodesta, because it was the first time we publicly heard from him. Yes, he'd kind of given out a statement, that kind of thing, but it was the first time that we had actually publicly heard him, recognize his new situation with Colorado. And I posted on Twitter, and I saw Dinger's Burner was bringing this up as well. I wasn't a huge fan of his initial, just the way he worded his response. And I understand that I'm not there. We're kind of taking things out of context just because it was the first, he's just getting one very specific moment to respond to a question. But again, I posted on Twitter, look, salient experiences, the moments that you get, all of those things are great. And he had mentioned it too. Winning is how you get those things. But I want him to acknowledge, and what I'm hoping this organization does, is they acknowledge the frustration that these fans have felt over the last, almost this entire organization's existence, right? Especially this last decade. And so, yes, you're here to create memories, you're here to create moments, but at the same time, that comes from winning. We've seen amazing moments. We've seen amazing memories here in Colorado with the Rockies. We had some incredible moments last year despite all the losses. But at this point, the one thing that hasn't happened for the Rockies is you haven't won a World Series. You've never won a division title. That's what needs to be the priority. It can take as long as it needs to take, but I want to see this commitment to winning above all else.
Yeah, and it's funny because that quote in itself, if the first time I heard it, I basically almost turned my phone off because I was so angry about the quote in a certain context of itself of basically saying we need to create salient moments. He later gets on to, if you get the full quote, he later goes on to say those are created by winning, which is completely accurate. I am not sure where my Rockies fandom would be today without the 07 run.
Yeah.
And without going to game 163 and seeing them beat the Padres firsthand and that kind of stuff. And what I think is actually, I'm going to spin this into a positive because that's what I do. I think the really encouraging part for us Rockies media and fans and everybody that follows the Rockies and just wants nothing more than the Rockies to be good, I think it's an acknowledgement that Paul DePodesta gets that. And I think if you can spin that quote in a negative light and say he doesn't care about winning or he just wants the fans to be happy, which he said winning will create that. Mm-hmm. But the actual acknowledgement of the fans is, I think, a giant step in a different direction for the Rockies. When have they ever really come out and said, oh, we're worried about the fans, or we know that we have this big of a fan base? They may have always thought that, but they never publicly said it. And his first quote as the Rockies president of baseball operations was talking about how great of a fan base we have, because we've talked about it on the show before. Yes, there's better teams out there as far as the product on the baseball field, talking about, like the Tampa Bay Rays or a few of these other teams that even, look at it, the Cleveland Guardians. They didn't even sell out a playoff game. So the crazy thing about Colorado is while the product on the field has been in pretty dire straits for a better part of 5+ years now in general, and just slowly declining, he realizes, and I'm pretty sure has been told this by Walker and the Monfort family and whoever else was in that interview, like, this city is ready for baseball. Yeah. This city is ready for good baseball. The city is craving baseball. We already show up when the team literally is the worst team in the history of baseball for 100+ games until they dug their way out of it at the end of the season. This city's ready to get behind a baseball team. And the fact that he acknowledges that versus just talking about, yeah, I want to build a winner because I want my ego or I want to fix this problem. Like, yes, that's all part of it. But the fact that he acknowledges that there's such a massive want for good baseball in Colorado and such a massive fan base behind him, I think was actually a positive. It's actually a step in a different direction for Rockies front office.
Well, you mentioned step in a different direction. I think one of the biggest things that stood out to me from a positive perspective, at least from my vantage point, is the night and day difference between him and Bill Schmidt. Right, you look at, even just from an eye test, right? You watch him speak, his comfortability with the media, his presence, his transparency so far, his willingness to get in front of a camera and talk, and that to me is a step in the right direction as well. And that's not a dig on Bill Schmidt. I mean, I think Bill Schmidt's issues went beyond that. It went into the player and personnel and all of those kind of things, and his relationship with the Monforts. All of that situation. I think for me, Paul DePodesta, you look at him, he's a Harvard guy. He's got a good head on his shoulders. Everyone I've heard who's talked to or has a relationship with Paul has said really good things. Now, yes, the main thing is you have to get back to winning. I'm not saying that you're winning points just by being a well-presentable person.
A well-presentable external candidate.
Yes,
is literally what we're looking at.
But it is a step in the right direction, right? And that's the point I'm trying to make, is that, these kind of intangible pieces, like, they matter when you're talking about the Colorado Rockies, an organization that is historically very stubborn about operating a certain type of way organizationally. So to see the Rockies go outside the organization, to see them kind of get, I don't know, almost even unconventional. I mean, this is a huge risk. This is not a safe pick for the Rockies. This isn't, people are saying, oh, if this is a classic Rockies move to go, find some guy who hasn't worked in baseball in 10 years and bring him in. Like, no, this is a risk for the Rockies. It's a risk because he hasn't worked in baseball for 10 years. It's a risk because he was in the NFL and struggled in the NFL, right? Like, but I think the opportunities that he provides to provide a new perspective, to provide a refreshing outlook, and we've seen Walker talk about that. We've seen the Monforts kind of shed some light onto that being one of the reasons why they chose him to come in, I think is a good thing. I think, again, I lean towards the fact that this is a good hire for the Rockies so far, and time will tell if that's true.
Right, and I'm in the same boat as you, because there's a lot of Rockies fans out there, which I never blame Rockies fans for being negative on any hire they make, any player that they sign, anything like that. Like, they haven't built up the credibility, especially since the 2017-2018 playoff run. Everything they've done as a baseball operation has kind of reflected negatively on them, reflected negatively towards the fan base. So I don't blame you if you don't want to be excited for this or you want to say it's crazy. But the fact that they actually did something that feels a little crazy in the opposite direction of how they've consistently run it is exciting. It can't not be exciting from the fact that he ran, like, when I think it was you or somebody else when they were like, hey, yeah, we hired Paul DePodesta from the Cleveland, and I think we had this comment
it was Lefty.
Cleveland, and I thought it was Guardians as well, and then they said the Cleveland Browns, and I legit thought it was maybe a mistype, or whoever I was talking to was just confused, and it's a very out-of-the-box move. But we have seen the Rockies stay in the box for so long. Clearly, it's not gotten them anywhere, and now stepping out of the box may be the right move, and time's going to tell. But this is a guy with experience in baseball, experience now in football. He's a smart dude, Harvard guy, obviously, like we talked about. I think it's a step in the right direction, and only time's going to tell if it's an actual positive move or not. But in reality, if we're sitting here talking about what move is Bill Schmidt going to make, this is 10 times better than that.
Yeah. This is night and day from what we would have been seeing if, like you said, if the Rockies hadn't decided to flip their front office. And we were worried about whether or not they were actually going to do that. I remember Lefty bringing up the question of, hey, are the Rockies going to do anything with their front office this year because you've got a lockout coming in 2027 possibly. And so, yeah, the fact that they're moving somewhere is a step in the right direction. So we'll see. And also, this is an era of unconventional moves. You've got Tony Vitello. Tony Vitello, getting hired as the first ever college manager coming over from Tennessee to San Francisco. Gabe Kapler getting hired as a GM in Miami. Like, what? That's a crazy move. Craig Stammen, former player going to San Diego. Like, this is an unconventional era of baseball. And now you get an NFL executive getting hired in to lead the Rockies out of the ditch that they currently find themselves in. I think it's a good move. I think it's a very good move. Now, I did see some people making jokes about the fact that Nico Harrison just got let go from the Mavs. That is not an unconventional move that the Rockies need to be making anytime soon. We don't need to go into the NBA. But I think the Paul DePodesta move is.
You don't have any good players you can trade away.
Yeah. Nico's safe here in Colorado. But hey, we got to take our first break of the show. I think I heard Kevin calling back in. He's calling back in, I believe, from his computer. So we'll see if we get him to work this next time around. We'll pause for a quick break and see if we can talk to Kevin coming up next. Well, I want to give some love to our friends over at Game Time, because if you were heading out to watch some basketball, maybe you're going to go watch some Avs play this winter. Maybe the Broncos, best team in the NFL. You got to go use our friends over at Game Time. Game Time is the best place to get the best deals on tickets from across professional sports. And we're going to be doing a show tomorrow called the Denver Sports Podcast. It's my second show each week. And we're going to be talking about, which Denver team has the best chance to win a championship. It's a really tough debate, because you can make the argument for all three of those teams. And the cool thing is you can go watch all three of those teams in the peak of their seasons here in Colorado using the Game Time app. Get those tickets. The Game Time app has incredible stuff like seat views, the lowest price guarantee, and Game Time ticket coverage. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code DNVR for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, use code DNVR for $20 off. Tap Ticket Go. Download the Game Time app today.
Ducks at Avalanche tonight. Ducks leading their division, Avalanche leading their division. Intense game down at Ball Arena. You can get in for $69.
I love it. Don't get me started on how late the Nuggets play tonight.
You mean tomorrow morning?
Tomorrow morning, exactly. Also want to give a shout out to our friends over at Brunt Workwear. This is a new partner of ours. Brunt Workwear, they are a best-selling work boots, and they are built for the toughest job sites. One of the coolest things about Brunt Workwear is their boots. And I wanted to really specifically highlight their boots because they have some of the best work boots out there. And it's actually really cool that we partnered with Brunt Workwear, because I went hunting last weekend for the first time and got to try out some of their work boots while I was actually out in the field hunting. And they are incredible. Not only are they lightweight and durable, but they're tough. I mean, they are built for tough environments, whether you're out in the wilderness, hunting, trying to keep your feet warm, or you're on the job site, you're working in construction, or maybe you're doing some renovations. Brunt Workwear, their boots are built tough. They have incredible products, they have incredible designs, and they make sure that you have the boot and the gear that works best for you. So with temps dropping and the holidays coming up, it's time to treat yourself or the hardworking man in your life to real comfort. Skip the throwaway gifts and get him something built to last. Brunt Workwear, our listeners get $10 off their entire order using code DNVR at checkout. That's bruntworkwear.com and use code DNVR. Order today and let them know you heard it here on the DNVR Rockies podcast.
You know who needs some Brunt boots is Paul DePodesta. He's got a lot of mud and shit to work through. He needs some Brunt boots.
Workwear stuff.
Let's send him a pair. We'll find out what size he is and send him a pair over. Be like, hey,
he would appreciate that.
Maybe a hard hat too. He might need that.
I think I saw. Cole in the chat says DePodesta worked remotely from California when he was with the Browns. So we'll see if he moves to Colorado. Yeah, you always have to have some good boots.
Well, and would you rather be in Cleveland or Denver? That's like if you had to move to Cleveland, Ohio from LA, moving to Denver, Colorado from LA, not as bad. Not if you can deal with a little bit of snow, a little bit of cold, definitely a great place to
take it. Yeah, some would call that an upgrade. Speaking of upgrades, we got our boy Kevin. Yaya.
Let's see.
Oh,
there he is.
he doesn't sound like a robot anymore. Welcome to the show, Kevin. Glad to have you. How's your time out in Vegas?
It's been great. I mean, honestly, I think the Rockies are one of the hot stories out here right now. With DePodesta really coming back into baseball, and a lot of people are wondering how that works. And we're going to find out more whenever he meets the media in a larger sense today at 2 o'clock Pacific time, 3 o'clock Mountain.
Nice. Yeah, I'm excited. And we're going to do our introductory press conference as well with him on Thursday here in Denver. But you're getting kind of a first look at the Rockies' new president of baseball operations. You got to speak with him alongside Patrick Saunders and Thomas Harding yesterday out in Vegas.
Yeah.
What was your initial reaction? What's your initial kind of just perspective on him as a person and what he brings to this position?
First of all, very impressed. I mean, this is a guy that I think realizes the challenge that's ahead of him, and he's absolutely salivating to tackle it. And we talked to him for roughly 30 minutes yesterday, off the record. I know, or not off the record, but off video. I know that everybody's seen that little snippet that we all put out yesterday, and there was so much more that went into, whenever we were talking to him about what excited him, what motivated him, what really got him going. And one of the biggest things that stuck with me yesterday was whenever he talked about he was with the Padres in game 163 in Denver in 2007. And he remembers how electric Coors Field was at that time, and his excitement about bringing that back and the ability to bring that back, at some point down the road. And I think that's something that really stuck with me, is you could see his eyes kind of light up whenever he was talking about that. And I think Rockies fans should be excited about the direction that things are going right now.
Yeah, I think we're getting pumped. And the one question I had, which I said on our emergency show on Sunday from a tailgate, I have had a few drinks at that time. But so is it safe to assume, and I don't know if any of us know, but it's pretty safe to assume that he was part of these discussions the entire time, and it was just the only other two names that got out there because he's in the middle of an NFL season? Like, I feel like they wouldn't have turned it around that quick if this wasn't part of the plan the entire time.
Yeah, this was something that I think everybody wanted to keep on the lowdown, and they did a really good job of doing that. I mean, as you said, it's in the middle of the NFL season, and so, that would not have been good optics for the Browns, obviously, and would have caused a lot of questions to come up before any kind of hire was made. But I think that, he said point blank, and he's mentioned this numerous times whenever I've spoken to him or been with him, is that his first love is baseball. Yes, he went to the Browns. It was a challenge, and he loves embracing challenges. But his first love is baseball. And so whenever the opportunity to come back to Colorado came up, the intrigue of how to win at altitude, the intrigue of an entire region that you've got as fans, and that's something that he pointed out yesterday, is that he's worked in Oakland, where you had San Francisco across the bay. He's worked in New York, where you were battling the Yankees as well. He's never had a region where he could draw from fan support and really see the buzz, all the way up and down the mountain time zone. And so there's a lot of things that he said appealed to him, but make no mistake about it, he's learned from his time at the NFL, but he's super happy to be back in MLB.
Yeah, well, speaking of the NFL, he got the question yesterday about Deshaun Watson, about that decision to, or whether it was his decision or a collective decision to bring Deshaun Watson to the Browns. Obviously, we know kind of how that story ends. What was your conversation with him like? I know you also put out an article with the Denver Gazette on that as well, but kind of give me your take on how he handled that question, what he was kind of talking about, because you also can make those comparisons between the Deshaun Watson deal with Cleveland and the Chris Bryant situation in Colorado. So the question was bound to come up. What was his reaction to that?
Yeah, that was a question I asked him point blank. I said, are there similarities between the Deshaun Watson contract and the Chris Bryant contract? Let's take out the off the field stuff. Okay, let's make sure we're not comparing the two there. But whenever you're talking about just the contracts themselves and how the both franchises have been very disappointed by the ROI that they've gotten on those, there's a lot of similarities there. But he was also very quick to say that, they're two different sports. And when you talk about one of the most important positions of any sport, it's quarterback. And so it's very safe to say that maybe the Deshaun Watson contract has hurt the Browns more than the Chris Bryant contract has hurt the Rockies. And I think Broncos fans can think about the Russell Wilson deal and everything else. But he was very quick to say that, a lot of times long-term contracts do not work out the way that you want them to. They don't age the way you want them to. But I also got the feeling that he's not ready to close the door on Chris Bryant just yet. I think he said that there's still time to see if something does work out. I still think we've got a lot of off season to figure that out. But there are similarities there, but he's not ready to say, oh yeah, they're peas in a pod.
Interesting. That question is going to be asked to him a million times over the next few months, right? And not just the Deshaun Watson situation, but the Chris Bryant situation. What are you going to do with that albatross of a contract? So I'm sure this is just the tip of the iceberg in how we kind of handle this moving forward. But I want to change gears. We've only got you, just for a little bit longer, but managerial stuff. He mentioned Warren Schaefer. He said, I believe something along the lines of Warren Schaefer will be involved in the process of, this managerial search. I don't really know the context of what he said that in. Does that mean he is a candidate? Does that mean he's assisting him in finding a replacement? Like, what was your take on that?
No, he is a candidate.
Okay.
He's still a candidate and I think part of the process when he said that he's part of the interview process. So he's definitely going to get his fair shake. And he mentioned yesterday that yesterday was the first time that he and Warren had ever really, dived in deep on a conversation, and that he'd really gotten to know him. They had exchanged some texts and some things like that, but yesterday was the first day that they'd ever really, on the phone at least, or through Zoom, sat down and talked. So I think there's still a lot of ways to go with that, as well as with the GM conversation as well. I think, everybody would love to have that buttoned up by winter meetings in a perfect world. That's 3 weeks away or so. So there's still a lot of stuff to be done between now and then. But there's no question Warren Schaefer is definitely going to get a chance to state his case and be in the running for, either the manager or, as has come up a few times, the possibility of a bench coach. Who knows? But I think Schaefer will get the opportunity to be in the interview process for sure.
Okay, so the managerial stuff, obviously that's kind of something that we're going to keep an eye on. But also, like you said, the GM situation is a big one. I don't know if he talked to you about the general manager search, or if he kind of dove into that with you guys yesterday, or if you just have some thoughts on this. But what's your take on what the Rockies general manager situation looks like right now?
Yeah, I think that they, here's what I've been saying here in Vegas, is that they did such a good job of keeping DePodesta out of the spotlight whenever we were talking about the GM or the Pobo search, that now who knows who they're talking to for the GM side. I think everybody is linking them with Thad Levine because of their childhood connection, and could this be a possibility? But I hesitate because that seems like the easy answer right now, and I don't think the Rockies are doing anything very easy or very obvious. I think they're doing a lot of things behind the scenes that we don't know about. And so I think we're going to hear some names come up, and Levine could be a part of that. But I think that he's going to look for somebody that is going to join him in that whole, what Walker Monfort said from day one, bringing in that outside perspective. And so I think it's about finding somebody that can not only work with DePodesta in his role, but also somebody that's willing to, again, to embrace the challenge. This is not going to be an easy place, and it's also not going to be one that they're going to win next year. It's going to be one that it's going to take some time. And so do you have somebody who's patient and somebody who has some ideas about not only how to build up the major league roster, but also the farm system as well? Yeah,
100%. Last question from me. Autonomy. How much autonomy, do you think the Monforts give to him? And obviously, that it's we'll never know the official answer to that because we're not in those closed door meetings. But is that something that came up in those conversations of hey, have you kind of pushed back on stuff with the Monforts? Like, what was the interview process like? Like, what does that look like from your perspective?
Yeah, there's autonomy there. And he said point blank that they are willing, they being the ownership group, they being Dick Monfort, they being Walker Monfort, the people who are making the decisions and will ultimately have the thumbs up or thumbs down on things, that they are willing to give him the autonomy to try new things and to bring in new ideas. And I think that in and of itself is a refreshing change. We've talked for so long about are the Rockies ever going to really change their thinking or try new stuff? We're in that era now. It feels like that. And so he was very point blank that the autonomy is there, and he's going to get the chance to institute some changes. And again, whoever that GM coming in, I'm sure that he will have that same autonomy as well.
Yeah, the thing I think I'm most excited, and I think we'll be able to get a vibe over the offseason, clearly into free agency and all that, is if there's a, the Moneyball thing is going to get overplayed. Obviously, the dude was based on a character in one of the most famous movies of all time. But in that same light, it's going to be very interesting to see if the Rockies take whether it's Moneyball or a different direction, a very specific direction as a front office, choosing players as their trades, their signings, all of that, and think that there's a specific way to win here, and then really dive into that and maybe make some moves that not everybody thinks in the baseball world. Can't just go sign Shohei Ohtani here, but they're looking at on-base percentage or batting average of balls in play, whatever those numbers are. It'll be interesting to see if there's a specific direction this team takes. Do you think we can see that this offseason, or is it going to be another year?
Yeah, and Spence, you hit something on the head just a minute ago. The Moneyball thing is so blown out of proportion. I mean, that's all everybody's saying. It's like, oh, he's a Moneyball guy. Well, he's so much more than that, and I think that if you look at what he did with the Mets, what he did with the Dodgers, there's a lot more to this guy than just what happened with Billy Beane and the A's that, Brad Pitt and Jonah Hill made famous on the big screen. So I think one of the things that we've got to realize is there's really another thing at play here, and that is what's going to happen in 2027. With the CBA, will the Rockies sign long-term deals not knowing if there's even going to be a 27 season to start? With the CBA expires at the end of this season, I think there's a lot of unknown about what comes next. And so I think that that's going to play not only on the Rockies, but a lot of people's minds as well. But I think you're going to see some guys brought in this offseason. I do think they'll be active in free agency. And I do think you're going to see some guys brought in, unlike the Kyle Farmers, shall we say, that they're going to make a bigger impact. I think along the lines of the impact they were hoping Tyro Estrada would make last year, but obviously never did.
Yeah. Is there a world in which we see Bo Bichette in Colorado at second base after this offseason?
Sure. There's a
That'd
world.
be huge.
I mean, you're going to have to pay through the nose for him. But if you're in a bidding war with the Dodgers and the Blue Jays for him, you're going to have to. But I'm not putting anything out of the realm of possibility right now. I'm really not.
Yeah, I love it. Kevin, thank you. We could talk all day, but we got to hit our next break. Kevin, thank you again. Yeah. Enjoy Vegas. Try not to spend too much money. Make sure you come back with a little and enjoy yourself.
All right. Sounds good, guys. Appreciate the time.
Kevin Henry with the Denver Gazette. Appreciate him as always. If you guys want to see more of his work, head over to the Denver Gazette. He's got 2 great articles already from winter meetings, or I should say GM meetings, that you guys can that you guys can look at. So yeah, we're gonna hit our next break of the show. After the break, general manager candidates as well as manager candidates. Is there a world in which Adam Ottavino plays into this? Let's talk about that coming up next. Well, got to give a huge shout out to our friends right now over at Toyota. Toyota is the official vehicle of DNVR, and I am a huge fan of Toyota. I have been driving Toyotas forever, and I can't say enough good things about Toyotas. Whether you're jumping into a brand new 4Runner, maybe you're getting a new RAV4 like I got just a couple months ago, or you're going the truck route with a Tacoma or a Tundra. You can't go wrong. And as winter comes up, I know it hasn't snowed yet here in Colorado, but you got to have a vehicle that can handle itself. And I've seen a lot of cars driving around in the snow over the last few years that I'm like, man, why is that car on the road right now? That can't be said about Toyotas. Toyotas, whether you're, like I said, going with an SUV or maybe you're going with a truck, they've got all-wheel drive, four-wheel drive options. Even some of their hybrid options, like the RAV4, can get you on the roads that you need to get on, and to the places you need to get safely. They've got so many different choices with Toyota, whether you're going SUVs, trucks, sedans, that can give you a smooth ride and get you where you need to go. And they're just great cars. Can't say enough good things about them. So visit your Front Range Toyota stores at a location near you. AutoNation Toyota, Arapahoe and Centennial, Corwin Toyota in Boulder, Groove Toyota in Littleton, Mountain States Toyota in Denver, Stevenson's Toyota East in Aurora, and Stevenson's Toyota West in Lakewood. Toyota is the official vehicle of DNVR.
My guy Aiden down at Groove Toyota Littleton hooked me up on Friday. I'm now rolling in a 4Runner. Don't have the Tundra anymore. Still have the DNVR Tundra, which I get to drive around, but I'm now full dad mode.
You're full
ready for a
mode.
second. Ready for a second car seat to go behind me here in a couple months. 4Runner mode. I'm pumped about it. I love it.
I love it. 4Runner's great cars. Also want to give a huge shout out to our friends over at Dick's Sporting Goods because holidays coming up around the corner, not too far away. I know, we still got to get through Thanksgiving and whatnot, but then holidays are coming up here in about a month or so, and you got to get a head start on that holiday shopping. Head over to our friends at Dick's Sporting Goods to pick up all the great things like apparel from Nike, Adidas, FP Movement, and DNVR. You can get our swag from Dick's Sporting Goods as well. You can also get awesome stuff if you want to get your boyfriend or your fiance or your husband or maybe your wife a new pair of golf balls. You can go get those at Dick's Sporting Goods. I mean, they've got sports gear, they've got apparel. They've got new shoes. I actually went and just got a new pair of running shoes at Dick's Sporting Goods as well. So you can't go wrong. Do you ever do like any golf shopping at Dick's Sporting Goods? Do you ever like restock on golf balls and that kind of stuff when you head out there?
It's great Christmas shopping or holiday shopping, I should say, where you can go in there and find all those gifts for the golfers in your life. They have a lot of good athletic wear. I get a lot of my workout clothes there. So yeah, Dick's Sporting Goods. Every time I walk in there, I'm like, I'm probably going to spend more than I want to.
yeah, you're gonna splurge a little bit. That's what Dick's Sporting Goods is good for. So get your gear fast with free curbside pickup at the nearest store or easy shipping from Dicks.com because every season starts at Dick's. All right, I'm seeing some comments in the chat. Lane says this conversation has given me a pair of huge purple sunglasses. I mean, how can you be a Rockies fan and see at least moves being made, whether you think they're the best moves possible or not, see moves being made that are taking the Rockies in a different direction from what they've been in over the last decade and say it's a bad thing, right? I'm not saying that it's going to work out exactly the way we think it is, and I'm not saying that this is what gets us to a World Series, but you're going in the opposite direction from what we have been, from the direction that we've been heading for the last decade. And if nothing else, that's at least going to tell us something, over the next couple of years of hey, maybe we have to refine some things. Maybe it means hiring a new manager down the road. Maybe if they hire Warren Schaefer for the next couple of years, maybe 2 years from now, maybe we got to go with a veteran manager, right? But at least you're going the opposite direction from which you've been heading for the last 7+ years. So it's good. I've got some purple colored glasses on. I'm feeling good about that. Rockies GM position. We're probably going to see a general manager in place before winter meetings, which is coming up December 7th through the 10th. We'll be there in
Florida.
Orlando. It's going to be a great time. What's your thoughts on this?
So after talking to Kevin, I'm pretty confident that we're never going to know who this guy is until he's announced. And I'm very interested to see the level of this next general manager, because I was starting to think about it when we were talking to Kevin and talking about the potential of Thad Levine, but even looking back to when Foreman and Saez were in the conversations we didn't know the position. That was the other thing about the hiring of DePodesta is we know now he's the president of baseball operations. So now there's still a potential for another hire, which hopefully happens at the GM position. And you wonder if, I'm not saying obviously that, it's pretty public that Saez and Foreman were out of the running, whether they turned it down or whatever. But it will be interesting to see if the Rockies GM position, you're coming in and being the GM, which is obviously a very highly regarded job, just in general, being a GM of a Major League Baseball team. I'm interested to see if that's as highly regarded as the job that potentially these guys were interviewing for. Is that making any sense?
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying.
Saez and Foreman maybe thought they were going to be the president of baseball operations, and that was a big enough jump from assistant GM that they were currently at to make it to the Rockies. Now, is it okay, we can still get an assistant GM from somewhere that thinks it's a big enough jump, even though he's working under A, the Monforts, now B, DePodesta, to be the GM of the Rockies? Or will they go kind of on, not lower level, but will they have to go down the rung a few positions in order to get somebody to be the GM or somebody that, is thinking along the same lines that DePodesta is, because while he's the president of baseball operations, he's got the experience of being a general manager in Major League Baseball. He's been a director of scouting. He's done all these things. So I'm confident that now, like we talked about 3 or 4 podcasts ago, we've hired the one guy who I'm now confident in hiring everyone else below that. We're Dick Monfort and Walker Monfort and anyone else in the Rockies front office other than DePodesta, all you got to do is sign the check.
Yeah.
Let DePodesta hire this guy who will work in lockstep with him, because as we talked about the whole Warren Schaefer thing, which I think we'll get to, is there any guy that even if he doesn't end up being the manager, is there any guy that is interviewing for the manager job that is happy about interviewing for the manager job now that Bill Schmidt is out than Warren Schaefer, because we heard about all of the infighting with them and the lack of communication with them. I think Warren Schaefer's like that really good cashier that you've had at the store for a long time, and the manager finally gets fired and he's like, well, I like it here. I want to stay here. I have a good relationship with my players in Warren's case. But now I have a different boss that I can actually communicate with and get off on the right foot with. It's a lot like the Nuggets situation and how that kind of unfolded. And now the Rockies may be following the Nuggets footsteps of rehiring an assistant coach or an interim manager in Warren Schaefer and going out and getting a Ben Tenzer and John Wallace and combining them in a DePodesta and whoever this GM is to really reshape the same team, but turn it down a different path going forward.
Yeah, and we'll see if he decides to go back the Warren Schaefer way. I think we'll probably talk about the managerial search here after this GM conversation, because there's some unpacking I want to do on that as well. But from a GM perspective, you're right. I don't think we have any idea what the name of this person is. I see a couple people in the chat saying, is it too much to think that, like Matt Holliday could come back as a GM, or I see Todd Helton's name getting tossed out there. Adam Ottavino is another name. Obviously, Thad Levine, his name gets thrown out there because A, he'd be qualified, and B, he was a childhood friend of Paul DePodesta. For me, like you said, we're not going to know who that person is until they're hired or until someone publicly reports it. But I think the Rockies are going to keep that one pretty close to the vest. I'm curious, if I could ask Paul DePodesta, a question on this, I would. I'm curious what theme direction he wants to head, because Paul is obviously a very analytic-minded individual. He's, the Moneyball guy. He's a guy who, even though the Browns have been a miserable team for the last decade or more, they've still led the NFL in analytics. They've still been one of the top teams in analytics in the NFL. That is what the Rockies desperately need here in Colorado. So that's going to be a focal point for him. Do you hire a GM who also is an analytic-minded person? Adam Ottavino is kind of in that same realm where he, went in and kind of revived his career through data and analytics and technology and all of those things. Do you hire a GM that complements the analytic-minded president of baseball operations, or do you hire a GM who complements a different part of that? I know the Rockies organizationally have told us that they are really wanting to highlight someone who can make decisions successfully through a trade deadline, right? We've struggled for years for the Rockies to have a good, successful trade deadline. And so,
ironically, last year may have been the best one we've had in years.
Right? Yeah, it's just because you did things. It's not like you made any blockbuster trades. You just finally were like, hey, we're going to trade Ryan McMahon. We're going to trade a couple of these pitchers that aren't doing anything for us right now and get some prospects, right? Like the Rockies have a lot of holes. And so for me, Paul DePodesta kind of fills the data and analytics hole, the Harvard mind that's going to get the brains of this operation back on track. The GM, I think you hire someone who is a good decision maker, who has a track record of making good decisions around a trade deadline, maybe a draft and development mind. That's to me what I want to see. So I don't really care who it is from a GM perspective. I want to see that person complement the strengths and weaknesses of what Paul DePodesta brings to the table, so you can kind of cover some of your grounds.
Yeah, and it'd be nice, not that DePodesta doesn't have these relationships, but he has been out of baseball for a while. So it would be nice to see the GM be a guy that has been maybe working his way up. Like, to me, it's there's probably other names in this search for president of baseball operations that we didn't hear. But like, if they go out and get a Sade or a Foreman to now be the GM, that to me is a home run hire and kind of falling in that exact Nuggets route of you're getting two guys to now do two different jobs rather than just hiring one guy to try to do both of these jobs. And both of these guys are more than qualified. And a guy that's been in baseball the past 10 plus years and has relationships around the league. Because that's honestly one of the things that I'm excited for. And we won't be able to see the exact benefits of it next year, maybe even 2 years from now. But the Rockies having, and I think there was a comment about it earlier, but the Rockies having some respect now in the fact that DePodesta's new and GMX is also new or has been around baseball. And instead of calling the Rockies thinking you can fleece them, you're calling the Rockies to have an actual conversation about these players. Like, that's what excites me, is that if we get some guys that have a little bit of rapport in the MLB, they can then go out to these other teams and say, hey, what do you think about this guy? And not be like, oh, dude, it's Bill Schmidt calling again. Let's see if we can get their best player.
The only deals he ever makes are the Yankees, right? Yeah, like that's all you see with Bill Schmidt. With DePodesta, maybe he'll spread it out a little bit more. He's got connections to different teams. Because it really did feel like Bill Schmidt only had connections with the Yankees. It's like the Rockies only traded to the Yankees, and that's it. And so, yeah, the depth is there a little bit more. But I want to talk about the managerial search, and we got to pause here for our next break. But after the break, we'll wrap up the show, because I think one of the biggest questions, and at least one of the more controversial questions that I've seen on social media, is what the Rockies do with their managerial search. And it's really split, almost like the Paul DePodesta reactions for fans. I'm seeing a lot of 50-50s. I have 50% of people saying Warren Schaefer, keep him in charge, let him be the bridge. And I'm seeing a lot of other people saying, no, bring a manager in here who knows how to win and can change the culture. Let's have that conversation coming up after this quick break. All right, managerial situation for the Colorado Rockies. Warren Schaefer has been announced as a candidate, which is fair. You can't blame him for the Rockies' failures last year, because the Rockies were a sinking ship to begin with. And in many metrics, you could argue that he changed the culture of the team. A lot of the players that I spoke with, along with other media members, all had raving reviews about Warren Schaefer and what he did to that clubhouse despite the losing season. You could make the argument that Warren Schaefer did the best that anyone could possibly have done under the circumstances last year. Now, does that make him the right fit for 2026 and beyond? That becomes the question. He has now been listed as a candidate in that search. I think it's fair for Paul DePodesta to not just hire him right off the bat and say, yep, he's the guy, we're moving on from that. I do think, especially because they don't have a GM in place, you wait until you get a GM in place, and then you go and kind of collectively hire the manager. But what are your thoughts on this? What direction do you think the Rockies go? Because the managerial thing could go a lot of different ways.
I personally hope that they rehire Warren Schaefer this year. I do, because I am a little biased, and I've always admitted that on the show, and I always will be. But to me, like you said, the culture did change, and it was tough to see where the Rockies were at early in the year, and then they're on track for the worst record in the history of baseball. Bud Black kind of seemed checked out. Didn't seem like he was relating to the players all that much. And Warren Schaefer comes in, and you can turn around is not the right term for it. They never really turned around the season, but there was definitely a little uptick in their, not only production, but just how, if the players weren't good enough, the players weren't good enough. And that's how you win and lose baseball games ultimately. But the feeling around the clubhouse and around the Rockies in general, even when they started to win a few games, was Warren Schaefer was doing a pretty good job of relating to the players and being that manager that was kind of like, it almost felt like the team was split. The organization was split into, here's big bad ownership in the front office, and then here's Warren trying to every day for 160, well, he only managed 130 games, 120 games, trying to keep those guys in the right spot and trying to keep them motivated to try to go out and keep playing baseball, even though their season was going straight downward. It was a terrible spiral for a good bit of the season. But I also think, kind of like Scott says, I think that no matter who the manager is of this team, I don't think they're going to be the manager that hopefully one day wins them a World Series.
Probably not.
And so that's where I would say you don't need to go get like a Ron Washington or a guy like that. That's just a name that comes. A Bruce Bochy.
Don Mattingly.
Yeah, Don Mattingly. That's managed before, and bring like a super, because unless they just go, and Kevin saying that they're going to be pretty active in free agency got my stinger up a little bit, which is exciting. But
got you sweating a little bit?
There would have to be 5 to 10 moves and basically retooling the entire starting roster. One thing that's positive about this team, whether they're good or not, this is a super young team.
Yeah.
Like, you could go out there and start basically your entire starting 9, if you will, and pitcher and catcher, and have everybody be under 27. Like we talked about a lot this year with Mickey Moniak being the oldest player on this team. So, excuse me, you have a super young team. Warren Schaefer knows these guys. He's comfortable with these guys, and I think they're comfortable with him. And then it's a wait and see process. I don't think that hiring we know they're not going to win next year. We've talked about that. 60 wins is probably the cap, and that would be a huge dub in our eyes in the 2026 Rockies season. But I don't think there's a point of like hiring a experienced manager and then in 27, 28, you've lost for 2 or 3 seasons, and then you feel like you need to change, or they just do the thing that they've always done and just hold on to a guy for too long, and then you're holding on to a Don Mattingly, and you're like, well, is he really the guy to lead this entire team? I'd keep Warren Schaefer around, and I'm definitely biased in that take, but I just think he fits the profile of this bridge manager that then maybe if you catch lightning in a bottle and you get a Jim Tracy-like or a Clint Hurdle-like run, then you keep him, and then you've had the manager from the start. Yeah.
No, I agree with you, and I'm a big proponent of the bridge, right? And this is not a disrespect to Warren Schaefer, who, like I said, you and I have professional relationships with Warren Schaefer. We get to talk to him when we're at the games, and he's a good guy. He knows what he's doing. He's really respected within the clubhouse. But I don't, like you said, I don't necessarily think that Warren Schaefer is the long-term World Series manager for the Colorado Rockies. And he might prove me wrong. He's been proving people wrong his entire career. But I do think he's a perfect bridge for where the Rockies are organizationally right now. Because right now, the Rockies are an organization that needs to be flipped upside down. You have 3, maybe 4, including a bullpen pitcher, Jimmy Herget, in there. But you have 3 decent to good players on your current roster. Everyone else is a complete question mark in my eyes. And a good manager, you bring in Don Mattingly, you bring in Bob Melvin or Bruce Bochy or Dave Roberts, insert manager here. There's nothing they can do about that, right? They're going to bring their version of a winning culture as best as they can, but that doesn't necessarily change the fact that your players are not good enough to be competing at this level as a whole. And that's what needs to be changed first. And I think the main thing, and we heard Paul DePodesta talking about it on MLB Network this morning. He was asked the question about the managerial situation for the Rockies, and he responded by saying, the biggest thing I'm looking for in a managerial search is culture. It basically is vibes, right? Warren Schaefer is that young, do-it-yourself kind of vibes guy within the clubhouse. He is a workhorse. He is going to be there before the first person shows up for practice and after the last person leaves after the game is done. The players know that. They see that. They respect that. I think that's what you're looking for in a bridge manager, right? Until you can change the foundation of what these players are, the talent on the roster, the manager doesn't make as big of an impact in my eyes. I think you keep a cheap option involved for the next couple years with Warren Schaefer. And then after 2027, when you start to have, the Ethan Hollidays, the Charlie Condons, those kind of guys really, hopefully, starting to make their way up to the big league squad. You've signed a couple free agents that have supplemented that. And maybe you look like a competent ball club again. Then you maybe reevaluate the managerial situation. But I just don't see it as a huge priority to go invest in some veteran candidate yet.
No, not with the roster you have, and not with if they want to build a winner here, it's going to cause a lot of turnover in the roster. And so if you're going to have the current roster where it is and not do a ton of change into this year, I think Warren Schaefer is the guy that, because whether or not he actually did it, which he clearly didn't win at Coors Field, nobody would have won at Coors Field this year as a manager. I think what's lost on some people is, yes, we hope that DePodesta can figure out winning at 20th and Blake. We hope that this new GM can figure out the right pieces to win at 20th and Blake, but Warren Schaefer knows what it takes.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that he did it. He clearly did not. I'm not going to argue that he was just like, oh, he's a winner and the players all sucked. It could have been part of him too, but I think his knowledge of actually managing an entire season basically at 20th and Blake and seeing how you win games, how you lose games late, how many pitchers you have to go with, how bad his starters were, and how he was just down 7-0 in the third inning more than half the games. Like Warren Schaefer's expertise, if you will, on managing games and what the players need to be at Coors Field, I think can be helpful to a DePodesta or to a new GM that come in and are like, hey, you've kind of seen wins and a lot of losses here. How do we change that? Because ownership whether they like to say so or not, I'm not in the firm belief that they really know what it takes to win here. And that's why they're going to hire DePodesta, because they hope he does. But I think Warren Schaefer, being an actual former baseball player and now managing his way all the way up through the Rockies organization to managing the big club for almost a year, he'll have at least an idea of what can get this train on the right track. And I think he can help DePodesta and a GM do that.
Yeah, and the other thing I look at too is Warren Schaefer. I think it's fair, given the circumstances, given how limited he was roster wise. There were some times that he was winning. The Rockies were known as the comeback kids in the middle of the season because they could be down 9-0 in the first inning, as we famously saw against Pittsburgh, or they could be down 4 runs in the 8th inning. The Rockies were like leading baseball in 8th and 9th inning comebacks for over a month. And yes, it's tough when you have the worst starting pitching core in baseball. There's nothing Warren Schaefer can do about that. But to a fault almost, I mean, I've criticized him on this. He was so intense about this almost like naive idea, like these blinders of like, we don't hear any outside noise. We're just, we believe we can come back. We're down 15-0 in the first inning. We know we can come back and win. And you laugh at it at first, because it's the Rockies and it sounds crazy. But there was a moment where I do think the players felt that. And when we'd go talk to Hunter Goodman after the game or Kyle Freeland after the game, after the Rockies had come back and gotten, some big comeback win, they would say, yeah, hey, Schaefer believes in us, man. Our manager, he knows that we can win, and we just keep that belief rolling. Like, that's the type of stuff that I see, and I say, you know what? I think that's a culture thing. I do think he has the ability to build a winning culture there. Whether he's a good manager or not is different, but I do think he's got the ability to build a winning culture in Colorado. Give him a couple years. The Rockies aren't going anywhere for the next 2 years. So give him a couple years. Let him help some of these young guys. Let him inspire some of these young guys with his work ethic. And then you make that decision down the road. But I think Warren would be fine in this situation. I don't know if I'd be upset. Like, I'm not like saying that he's the only option. If they decide to go somewhere else, I'm fine with that too. But I think Warren would be a good fit for where they are right now. Now, assuming they go somewhere else, let's just play hypothetical and say they don't hire Warren Schaefer. Would you be more intrigued by a former player? Would you be more intrigued by a veteran manager like a Don Mattingly? Like, what direction are you hoping they go if they decide to not go with Warren Schaefer?
I think they can make a kind of in-between move from what we want right now with the young, exciting, work hard guy. And I think going former player I'm very former player focused in all sport. I think former players, yes, there's a lot of athletes out there with podcasts that say insane things, but the reality of the situation is I have a close friend that plays in the NFL. And so I've heard a few things from him just about the inner workings of the team, the things that you never, ever even think about as a fan of, you watch them play 60 minutes, you see a couple snippets on YouTube or Instagram from their practices and think that that's all that goes on. There's a lot more, like insane more levels to what goes on. And so I'm always going to be a former player knows best. And maybe they're not the best manager. There's probably better managers out there that have never played, but I would love to go, if they go in a different route, I think it's a former player route of get a guy that's played in the MLB, maybe even recently, go super young with it. If your team's going to be so young, go super young with it.
Yeah, we saw San Diego do that.
I will say, to contradict my point a little bit, the only reason I will be actually really excited, like I want Warren to get this job. I think getting someone else, I will find a way to be excited for it because that's what I do with the Rockies. If they go straight up like crazy in free agency and trade, the no trade or riot players, I think Goodman's the only one that we riot. But like if they trade Doyle, and they trade Tovar, and they trade Beck, and they bring in like legit vets, like not Kyle Farmers, they bring in legit vets to start at all these positions. If that's the direction they take, even going into this offseason next year, I'd be okay with an older manager that's like, okay, we're not necessarily trying to win now, but we're trying to create a winning culture with new players. That's where I'd be a little bit more comfortable moving away from Schaefer and into a former manager role that's seen a winner with his own eyes or been a part of it.
Yeah, that's fair. I agree. I think it's just context dependent, whether the Rockies are in a quick rebuild sense or if they're kind of playing the long game. Everything that's pointed out to me seems like they're going to play the long game, but we'll find out more. We've got GM meetings happening right now, winter meetings coming up. Real quick, we're going to head into overtime here in the next 10 seconds. So if you're on television watching this, head over to thednvr.com or YouTube to continue the conversation heading into overtime. Albert Pujols, his name gets brought up a couple times. Fair, I mean, that would be fun. I think that would be a big tie to the Hispanic community as well, like some of the players from, the different Hispanic countries. I think that would be a huge pull to have Albert Pujols as your manager. Matt Holliday, I don't think he'd be coming back just because he said he's not willing to come back until his kids are out of the house. I see Scott has a question. He says, if Schaefer comes back, do we see Clint as the bench coach? That's a great question because I actually don't know what role Clint plays. I don't want to see Clint as the manager. No offense to Clint. He's, but his time has come and gone as the manager of the Rockies, in my opinion. I don't mind seeing him as a bench coach or a hitting coach or whatever that looks like. But if Schaefer gets, demoted to a hitting coach or infield coach like he was, I don't know. I don't know what role Clint plays on this team moving forward. I also know that Clint could easily retire and stay as a special advisor and, do book tours and just enjoy his life. So we'll see. We'll see how that all goes. I wanted to give one quick shout out to Hunter Goodman though, before we finish the show, because we've had all this crazy news happening over the last week, and Hunter Goodman, his news of winning the Silver Slugger completely swept under the rug, dude. We got a Silver Slugger winner on our 2025 Rockies.
Yeah, so funny little inside baseball story for you guys out there listening. Christian and I were working with our graphics lead last week, and he was making some graphics for our CHGO team and their potential MLB award winners. Yeah, and he hits us up and he goes, "Hey, do you guys have anything?" And we're like, "Well, Hunter Goodman's in the running for Silver Slugger, but he's not going to win it. You don't need to make us a graphic."
Will Smith, right?
And then we're in the middle of this whole DePodesta announcement, and then we get Hunter Goodman has won the Silver Slugger. It was just an insane timing for the Rockies to be so back for like 30 minutes of the world. It was insane.
I was at the tailgate. We had just done the emergency pod. I get to the tailgate and you and I are like high-fiving like, hell yeah, dude, we got our guy. And then I look down at my phone and I'm like, holy shit, the Rockies Hunter Goodman just won a Silver Slugger. And you're like, no fucking way. Like, are you kidding me?
Yeah, we both very much didn't think that was going to happen. No, we didn't think that. So shout out to him.
Yeah, shout out to Hunter Goodman.
We've had a Silver Slugger on this podcast in the last 6 months. So
we did.
No big deal.
Huge. And I remember we did a show last year. It was one of the end of the season shows, and we were kind of predicting, what awards will the Rockies players win? Because the Rockies did nothing last offseason. And I was predicting, what awards will the Rockies win? And I was like, will there be a Silver Slugger on the Rockies in 2025? And my prediction was Michael Toglia as the Silver Slugger. That didn't work out, but we got Hunter Goodman instead. No one thought that was gonna happen. Also, side note, did you see Talking Baseball taking shots at Michael Toglia on their that tweet about how MLB Network or MLB app changed their stat format?
Yes, the new format looks like booty. I don't like it. Yeah. Maybe it's just because I'm not used to it.
Yeah.
But yeah, him being on that, like, I don't know what, like, your response to it, that meme is so good.
I use it for everything.
You nailed it.
It's so funny. I'm just like, why Toglia? Why is Toglia getting dragged under the bus here? But shout out to Hunter Goodman. Silver Slugger Award winner. No other awards for the Colorado Rockies, but we've got our good Hunter Goodman to lean on, and we'll see what this offseason has for the Colorado Rockies. It is going to hopefully be an offseason of a lot of emergency pods, a lot of chaos, a lot of conversations. I'm excited. It's gonna be fun.
We have a lot of fun, hopeful content. Like we can be hopeful.
We can.
We are not going into we hope things change. Now we're into things are changing. We hope they can be good. That's our stage.
Well, and I will say this. We are in conversation right now to get a huge guest, probably one of the biggest that's ever come, at least from importance right now, probably one of the biggest guests to ever be on the DNVR Rockies podcast, and that's probably going to happen within the next week or so. So stay tuned with us. I know you guys are great. You guys are always showing up here to talk Rockies with us, but we appreciate you guys. As always, thank you for watching. We will be back on Tuesday of next week, tentatively, unless we have to change something with the special guest. But as of now, tentatively next Tuesday at noon, you can find another show of mine, the Denver Sports Podcast. Tomorrow, we're talking about which Denver sports team has the best chance of winning a championship. That's going to be tomorrow at 11. So thank you guys for hanging out with us. We'll see you guys next time on the DNVR Rockies podcast.
We all silly like the mayor.